Bonjour, merci d'être ici. Je suis ici pour un petit commentaire du Parti vert du Canada au sujet de la nouvel gouvernement libéral. Can we say it's a new majority Liberal government? I want to make a couple of obvious points first, as leader of the Green Party of Canada and someone who pays close attention to politics. I noticed that on April 29th, Scarborough Southwest and University Rosedale and Terrebonne were all Liberal seats. So I find it interesting that we now have a lot of coverage of the Liberals have swept in the by-elections and almost no commentary on why there were by-elections. Obviously, Terrebonne is the exception to every rule, being a Supreme Court decision that due to an Elections Canada egregious error, a voter's vote wasn't counted. But I don't think Bill Blair, the MP for Scarborough Southwest, campaigned in April to say, please elect me for a little while, nor did Chrystia Freeland say, I don't plan to stay. The by-elections have been created by the Prime Minister's internal decision-making with his cabinet about roles for high-profile people in safe Liberal ridings. I don't think we've seen the end of it. Certainly there are abundant rumors that the next high-profile, and I think much-respected Liberal who is no longer in cabinet, Jonathan Wilkinson, may be headed for a diplomatic post, which will cause another by-election. By-elections are expensive, and they are difficult for voters when they've just had an election. It's hard to engage people in a by-election. So I make those comments just to say the seat count has changed, not partially because of floor crossing, but only because of floor crossing. And that is part of our Westminster parliamentary tradition. I'm not going to rant against floor crossing, but I do think it's important to note that the electoral map didn't shift because of the by-elections. It shifted because 4 Conservatives decided to sit with the Liberal Party and 1 NDP member decided to sit with the Liberal Party, and that as individual MPs under Westminster parliamentary system is their right. I think it's not a new observation that people in politics live in glass houses, but certainly Pierre Poilievre didn't appear to be shocked when he was called into Rideau Hall with his boss, Stephen Harper, to see his new cabinet colleague, David Emerson, sworn in, who had days before been re-elected, who was a former member of Paul Martin's Liberal cabinet and became pretty swiftly a member of Stephen Harper's Conservative cabinet. These are not unpredictable, well, they've been unpredictable lately, but they're certainly not unprecedented events. L'autre chose, je vais faire un petit commentaire, c'est au sujet du changement climatique, de crise qui continue. Earlier today, there was a very important session. I don't think anyone really noticed it very much, but it was the Planetary Health Roundtable on the Hill. I was one of the co-sponsors, along with Senator Rosa Galvez. Important evidence was presented by scientists in terms of the galloping nature of the climate crisis and why it matters to hold to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the goal of the Paris Agreement. So of the scientists there, one of the conclusions that I found most startling, and I don't know how many of you, I have to admit, I looked it up to make sure I had it right. What does AMOC stand for? AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation System. This is basically the ocean current system that engages the Gulf Stream, moves the waters of our ocean in a current in the Atlantic Ocean. If it stalls, it's one of those global tipping points that flashes extreme danger. One of the scientists presenting this morning on parliamentary health just down the road at 1 Wellington pointed out that scientists now no longer regard the stalling of this global circulatory ocean system as of low probability. They think you can no longer say it's low risk. It's now moving into a zone of higher risk. And to avoid it being inevitable, we need rapid reductions in greenhouse gases and rapid protection of forest cover. Just to draw the obvious conclusion and the obvious point that despite the fact that climate change isn't being promoted by this new version of the Liberal government, we don't have a climate plan. We have a commitment in verbal commitment to meet our Paris Agreement targets. Mais la réalité, c'est que nous sommes maintenant dans une période de crise climatique. Le temps presse, c'est pas trop tard, mais c'est presque trop tard pour faire les choses primordial, essentiel pour avertir un désastre, une catastrophe énorme. So what we're looking at is the potential of the collapse of human civilization and an extinction crisis that it could include our own species. When this information is presented to parliamentarians just down the way, and I know nobody's noticing, I feel it's my role as leader of the Green Party of Canada to at least say out loud, we don't have much time. And when I sit in the House of Commons and hear Liberal MPs boast that we have now an all-time high production of fossil fuels from Canada, and we need more pipelines, it's hard not to stand up and scream, but I don't because it violates the rules of Parliament, and I follow parliamentary rules of procedure because I respect this place enormously. Lastly, what will the difference make? What's the difference between Mark Carney with a minority Liberal government and Mark Carney with a majority Liberal government? I honestly don't know. But since June, massive anti-democratic measures that expand and concentrate power in the hands of the Prime Minister, even to saying we can decree that laws can be broken, have passed rapidly. They haven't been slowed down because they've been supported by the Conservative Party. So Bill C-5 in this place, the so-called Build Canada Act, went from second reading to third reading from a Monday to a Friday, never adequately studied in committee. So when I hear our Prime Minister, whom I respect, saying, well, now that we have a majority, we won't have to waste so much time in committee. We do not waste time in committees studying bills. They are passed before they can be studied at all, over and over again. So I now hear a certain amount of interest behind me in the next speaker, so I don't want to take too much of your time.
Could I just get to two questions
Sure.
briefly? One, you sound like you're very unhappy that you've lost whatever influence in a minority parliament that you did with
No,
this
I don't.
majority. Is that correct or not?
Non, c'est pas vrai, pas du tout. La question d'influence reste la même. There's one vote for the Green Party right now. This majority Liberal government is a squeaker of a majority. One vote's going to matter. So we'll see. I don't feel at all lamenting the fact I've lost influence. I do feel that we need to understand the nature of recognized parties and that rule, because the NDP just managed to get themselves in a position to get money as a party with 6 seats. I'm not interested in the money, but the recognized party rule in this country should apply, and it doesn't apply to say we don't have rights. It's interpreted as though I don't have rights. I had more rights as a member of Parliament on May 2nd, 2011, when I was first elected, than I do now, because I've used my rights effectively, and the larger parties have retaliated and reduced my rights over and over again. But I don't feel my voice is less today than before Mark Carney got sufficient floor crossers to be a majority.
And my second brief question, if I would, Olivier, just for a sec, is Mr. Miller says they're looking at the possibility of putting restrictions on social media, AI, chatbots. You're a parent. You may be a grandparent. I thought you were, but I'm not trying to hasten that. What do you think?
I think we absolutely have to regulate artificial intelligence and the social media conglomerates that are pirates. I don't think we should have gotten rid of the digital services tax. That was one small step. Regulating AI, regulating companies like Chatbox and Grok. One of the things I lament is that when we claim we have elbows up, the Canada Pension Plan is still invested all over the world in things that are not Canadian. And I think a lot of Canadian parents and grandparents would be pretty upset to know that the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board put hundreds of millions of dollars into Grok, the company that developed deep fake AI. We have to pull back our pension investments to only benefit Canada, and we have to regulate AI, and we have to do whatever it takes to protect younger generations. It was in the Green Party platform in 2025 to have the same kind of age limitations that are found in Australia, but we need to do more than that. The content and the way in which these transnationals operate need to be regulated in Canada, and we should work in concert with allies around the world, as we were doing with the digital services tax.
Juste une petite question. Selon vous, est-ce que c'est une bonne idée de suspendre la taxe d'assises sur l'essence pour donner un petit coup de main avec les pressions à la pompe?
Non, pas du tout. Et désolé que ce n'est pas possible hier pour moi de prendre la parole pour un petit commentaire au sujet de la motion des conservateurs. C'est clair que maintenant, avec les guerres, il y a un niveau de profit pour les grandes entreprises pétrolières énorme. Just read in The Guardian that the big oil and gas companies are making $30 million a minute because of the wars. So why are we deciding to get rid of the excise tax on gas instead of an excess profit tax on the companies that are raking in the dough due to war? I also remember c'est la décision de l'ancien Premier ministre Stephen Harper qui a décidé que la taxe sur l'essence va rester permanente. Et c'est comme pour un fonds pour les municipalités partout au Canada pour leur effort de transport public. So the gas tax was made permanent in 2011 by Stephen Harper and named as the source for funding for municipal public transit. So who's going to make up that gap when we remove that tax until Labor Day? So it's a fake reprieve that doesn't address the insane and indecent level of profits being raked in by the oil and gas industry globally, profiting off war. Merci. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Merci pour ça, parce que j'ai oublié de parler juste sur ce sujet. Et c'est pour moi très important de comprendre la réalité des taxes sur l'essence. Ce n'est pas une mesure climatique, c'est une mesure mise en place par Monsieur Harper. Alors, the world is always strange and different, and people don't remember even history from 5 years ago, much less 15 years ago. Thank you very much. Merci tout le monde.